Greetings, folks. My name is Jess Tiergan, and the following video is going to be an assignment for week 7 of Ethics and Professional Standards in Psychology, due June 2022, for Aspen University. In this video, we are going to review 4 concepts. Those 4 concepts are client confidentiality, informed consent, clients turning 18 while in mental health treatment, and parental notification. After we review these 4 topics and how they are pertinent to me in the world of private practice, clinical mental health counseling, I will also particularly look more in depth at the topic of informed consent and some ways that I could potentially improve this in my practice, and other elements and things that need to be considered in regards to this topic. So let's begin. The first topic is client confidentiality. In regards to ethics, client confidentiality is one of the most important elements of our field in the world of mental health or psychology, and research in regards to living subjects. That is an important difference. Subjects versus suspects. Client confidentiality is what allows our clients to know that they're safe enough to talk about things that they might not talk about in other locations. It allows them to know that they can talk about things and not face repercussions. It may be their workplace or in their friend spaces or online. So client confidentiality basically boils down to, like, the briefest definition is what is said in our office stays in our office. And there are a few exceptions when it comes to client confidentiality. We can release basic client information for billing purposes if the client is not private pay. We can release basic client information in elements of safety. Usually, when we're looking at breaches of client confidentiality, it is due to safety. So this might be if the client is actively suicidal and we need to break confidentiality in some way, shape, or form to help assure that the client is safe. This might be to reach out to some form of first responders to help support our client. It might be to reach out to a family member if the client is home and has access to the means that they would use to harm themselves, and we need to let the family members know so they can help remove the access to that means. Or it could be release of information to a hospital or some other external resource that would help provide safety or support for our client. Even in these circumstances, or also in relation to safety, if our client makes a credible threat to someone else, we may have a duty to warn. We may have a duty to let that other party know that they are in risk, they are at risk of harm, and we may need to notify them of what that harm could look like. And so that would be a time when we might need to break confidentiality. We also might need to break confidentiality if there is imminent risk of or currently occurring child abuse, elder abuse, in some states, animal abuse, or immediate threat to certain government facilities like courthouses. So it depends on the laws of the particular state that you are in, but these times where there is an imminent threat to another's life, or to the life of the client, those would be one time when we are legally allowed and sometimes legally required to break confidentiality. And this is a time to really know the laws of your state really well, because this is going to look different for different states. But even in these circumstances, any time that we can maintain the confidentiality of our client, or gain permission from the client to release their information, the better. We don't want to violate their confidentiality without their consent anytime that we don't have to. So this is something we really want to do as much work around as possible for it to be something the client willingly consents to. Which leads us right into the second element, which is informed consent. So when we're talking about informed consent, we're talking about consent where the party enthusiastically agrees to whatever the element that we're talking about consent is. So that was Kindanos that was just talking over here. She's my service dog, but she is off duty right now, and she is patrolling the yard. So she's talking because she's off duty. Yes, so apparently she wanted to say hi and be on the video also. Now my brain is off track. Yeah, so enthusiastically agreeing to whatever the issue at hand is in regards to consent, and they're informed about what it may be. So when we're talking about informed consent, it means that that effort has been put into actively explaining to the client what is occurring, what that's going to be like, what they may experience. And this is super important in both client care and in research to make sure that our clients are aware of what they're agreeing to. Because sometimes a client will give consent to something, but they don't actually understand what they're giving consent to. And in that case, it would be uninformed consent. So trying to make certain that our clients are giving consent, that they're informed about what they're giving consent to, is going to be vitally important. The next element is clients turning 18 while on mental health treatment. So in a lot of states, clients have very different rights and very different confidentiality rights when they're under the age of 18 and over the age of 18. So we need to make sure clients are aware of what it's going to look like when they turn 18, because the things that might be the responsibility of their parents or guardians to make decisions about before they're 18 might suddenly be theirs when they turn 18. Also worth noting is this is going to be different depending upon what state you're in. So in the state of Colorado, children over the age of 14 can consent to their own mental health treatment without the notification of parents, but that's different state to state. Also payment is going to be different, and so parents information about payment often cannot be released to parents without a release of information signed after the age of 18. So these are all important things to consider and be aware of before the kiddo turns 18, and then everything changes. The last one is parental notification. The element of parental notification is going to be different depending on what the issue at hand is, what the pre-agreement is between the clinician, the client, and the parents. So this is something that needs to be very well considered and very well discussed prior to it occurring. So discussing with your client and with the parents of your client what's going to happen if the client reports self-harm, because that's not something that legally can be a violation of confidentiality in the state of Colorado. So if the client's over the age of 14, the client can say they don't want their parent to know, and the clinician can't legally tell the parent. The same with substance use. So this has to be something that's discussed in advance if the client wants that confidentiality to be maintained, or if that's something that can be discussed with the parents. And this can be a fine line and differ state to state. So it's definitely something that is better discussed beforehand than in the moment. If there's an immediate safety concern, such as an overdose, a suicide attempt, active suicidal ideation, where parental involvement is required to maintain the safety of the teen, this is a different matter, because now confidentiality can be broken to notify parents. But this is a time when communication is going to be vitally important, and be really, really clear with both your clients and the parents of your clients of what information you will release and not, because this will alter your relationship with both of these parties and alter the type of treatment and the success in treatment that you will have. So that finishes up our brief overview of these 4 topics. Real quick, I'm going to go back to informed consent. Informed consent is something that I've realized in my private practice that I need to get better at. I've realized that in some ways clients consent to things that they're not even aware they're consenting to. Things like things that there's social pressure around. Clients consent to sitting in particular chairs in my office. They don't realize that they could choose otherwise. They don't realize they could stand, or they could sit on the floor, or they could pace the whole time. They consent to these things without checking in with their bodies, without checking in with me, because there's social pressure. And realizing that in some ways I'm perpetuating them to perform these things, to consent to these things, without actually making the consent informed. I am also realizing that sometimes folks will like passively understand, oh, like confidentiality will be breached in these circumstances. They don't actually realize what that will mean, what it could mean to their job, what it could mean to their families. And so informed consent means actually going over these things and talking about what that could look like. And letting them make decisions that feel right and good to them, so that their rights are not violated at any point during this procedure. And this is an entire training I could do that would take a long time, but I won't. I will spare you all from that. So thank you all for listening to this today, and I look forward to connecting with you in the future. Peace.